There are moments in life when everything you thought you knew, every certainty, every comfort, every truth, turns to smoke in your hands. For me, that moment began with a single sentence from my grandfather. "Go home. Pack a bag. Pack it tonight." His voice was steady, but his eyes told a story my mind wasn't ready to hear. My name's Colton Bridges, 32 years old. Small-town veterinarian, lover of quiet roads and early mornings. My biggest worry until that night was whether Mrs. Patterson's tabby cat needed dental surgery. But all it took was one Sunday dinner, one envelope, to change everything I thought I understood about my family, and about myself. The evening started the way it always did in Kew Cedar Falls. Warm, loud, familiar. The smell of rosemary and garlic floated through the house. My mom, Joyce, ruled the kitchen like a benevolent dictator, apron on, cheeks flushed from the oven heat. Dad was in the dining room pretending to set the table but really just rearranging napkins and muttering about the Cowboys' defense. The twins, Tommy and Ben, were locked in an epic battle of green bean swords, and their father, Derek, was documenting every second on his phone like it was breaking news, and at the head of it all, Sadie Grandpa Reuben. Broad-shouldered even at 78, hair white but still thick, those glacier blue eyes scanning the room like he was memorizing it. He'd never been wrong. Not once. He predicted the flood of '09 before the weather service. Told me not to take that Denver job. The company folded a year later. He even knew my high school girlfriend was cheating on me before I did. So when he pressed that manila envelope into my hand, fingers trembling just enough to make the paper shake, I knew something was about to happen. "Don't open this here, Colton." His whisper cut through the noise. "Go home. Pack a bag. Pack it tonight." At first I laughed, half expecting some cryptic old man riddle, one of his rail yard stories wrapped in metaphor. But then I saw his eyes flick toward the window. Mom's lace curtain moved, though the air was still. The windows were shut tight against the October chill. "They're watching you," he said, gripping my wrist with a strength that didn't belong to his years. "You have 24 hours, not a minute more." And then, just like that, he turned away, reached for the gravy boat, smiled at my mother. The conversation swept him up like nothing had happened, but under the table, that envelope burned against my palm. Through the paper I could feel something solid, metallic, like a key. I glanced around the room. Penny was cutting pie, laughing about kindergarten stories. Dad was telling his Hammer Return of 1987 story for the 100th time. The twins were still chaos incarnate. It was a typical Sunday in every visible way, but the world had tilted. Because Grandpa Reuben, the man who'd once faced down a black bear with a tire iron, was afraid. And if he was afraid, I should have already been running. Let me take you back a few hours. That morning, Mom called. Twice. She always did, just to make sure I was coming. "Your grandfather specifically asked if you'd be here," she'd said, which wasn't unusual. Grandpa and I were close. After Grandma Rose died, I was the one who helped him sort through her things. Love letters from World War II, yellowed photos of places he'd seen from the rails. I drove him to every doctor appointment, listened to his stories about the tracks that stitched America together. He'd seen the country's veins from the cab of a freight train, from the deserts of Arizona to the steel bridges of Pennsylvania. He'd seen everything. But that day, he looked different, restless. His fingers tapped against the table in an unfamiliar rhythm, and he kept checking his watch, an old Timex from 1975 that never left his wrist. When I walked through the door, he smiled. "There's my boy," he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Come sit by me." I did, and that's when the questions started. "You still driving that old Ford pickup? You remember where I taught you to fish down at Miller's Creek? You still got that camping gear I gave you?" Each question landed heavier than the last, like he was ticking boxes on a mental checklist. Truck, check. Creek, check. Gear, check. And then came the one that really hit me. You remember the story about the railroad switch that saved 18 lives? Of course I remembered. He'd told it 100 times. A misaligned switch, a freight car full of hazardous material, and one engineer who noticed the signal light flicker at the last second. Pulled the brake, saved the crew, except this time, when he told it, his voice cracked on the last line. That switch. It wasn't luck, Colton. It was someone watching. Dinner carried on like nothing was wrong. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, pumpkin versus apple pie debate. The usual chaos that made our family feel indestructible. But behind all of it, there was a hum. A silent current only I seemed to feel. Every time Grandpa's eyes drifted toward the window, that curtain moved. No breeze, no open windows. Just motion where there shouldn't have been any. And I swear, once, just once, I caught a reflection in the glass, a shape, a shadow, watching. When dessert came, Grandpa stood. Come help me with the dishes. Colton, he said. I followed him into the kitchen, still holding plates slick with gravy. He waited until the door swung shut behind us. Then he turned, fast, his voice a low rasp. Listen carefully. What's in that envelope isn't mine. It's yours. It was meant for you 20 years ago, but I kept it hidden until I knew you were ready. Ready for what? I whispered. He looked at me for a long moment. Really looked at me. Then he shook his head. Doesn't matter what I think. You'll know when you open it. But once you do, there's no going back. I started to press him, but then Penny called from the dining room asking where the whipped cream was. Grandpa's face reset into its usual calm. He grabbed the dish towel, wiped his hands, and just like that, he was back to being the man everyone knew. But I couldn't shake the way he'd said, no going back. That night, I drove home under a sky the color of cold steel. Cedar Falls was quiet, the kind of town that sleeps early. The bakery below my apartment was dark, the scent of stale sugar still drifting through the vents. I locked the door, drew the curtains, and set the envelope on my kitchen table. For a while, I just stared at it. A simple manila envelope, edges worn, faint coffee ring near the corner. Nothing extraordinary, but the air around it felt charged. When I finally slid it open, my pulse drummed in my ears. Inside was a key, small, silver, unmarked, and a folded sheet of paper. The handwriting was my grandfather's, precise, firm. Colton, it read. If you're reading this, it means they've found me. You have less than a day before they find you too. Take the key and go to the place where the rails meet the river. Don't trust anyone, not even family, especially not Derek. I froze. Derek? My brother-in-law? The guy who made Dad laugh, who helped fix the garage door last spring? The man my sister adored. What the hell was going on? My first thought was that Grandpa had lost it. Maybe age had finally caught up. But as I looked closer, I saw something else inside the envelope. A photograph. Black and white, slightly curled at the edges. 3 men standing beside a train car marked with faded letters. U.S. Department of Energy. One of them was Grandpa Reuben. Younger. Stronger, maybe 35. Another was a man I didn't recognize. And the third, I leaned closer. It was Derek. No mistaking it. Younger, yes, but it was him. I dropped the photo like it burned. That couldn't be right. Derek was 40 now. If the picture was from the era it looked, mid-70s, he would have been, 5? Impossible, unless the man in that picture wasn't Derek. Or maybe Derek wasn't who we thought he was. The phone rang, snapping me back. Mom's number, I answered. Hey, Mom. Her voice was sharp, panicked. Colton, is your grandfather with you? What? No, I just left him. He's gone, she said. We can't find him anywhere. His car's missing, his phone's off. He left a note for your father, but it doesn't make sense. Something about the river and the train yard. My blood ran cold. The river, the rails, the exact words from his letter. I looked back at the key glinting under the kitchen light. My heart pounded like it was trying to break through my ribs. This was no coincidence. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside the window made my nerves twitch. I kept seeing that shadow in the curtain, kept hearing Grandpa's voice. 24 hours, not a minute more. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I threw clothes into a duffel, grabbed my flashlight, my old camping gear, and the key. The town was still asleep when I drove out, tires crunching over gravel as the fog rolled in from the fields. I passed the sign that read Cedar Falls, population 4,217, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I'd ever see it again. The old rail yard sat a mile past Miller's Creek, abandoned since the 80s, the kind of place kids dared each other to explore on Halloween. Rusted tracks, sagging sheds, the skeleton of a freight crane leaning against the morning sky. That's where the rails met the river. I parked by the chain-link fence, heart hammering. The padlock on the gate was new, shiny, too new for a place nobody visited. I pulled out the key. It fit. The gate creaked open, somewhere in the fog. A train horn wailed, distant, mournful, as if from another world. I stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of iron and water. Each step echoed against the silence. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Quick, sharp, a figure, tall, male, standing by the edge of the river, coat flapping in the wind. I called out. No answer. Then, he turned. For a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. It was Grandpa Reuben, alive. He raised a hand, motioning for me to stay back. His other hand pointed toward something behind him, a dark shape half buried beneath the dirt and weeds. A safe. My pulse thundered as I stepped closer. The same symbol from the photo, the Department of Energy logo, was faintly etched into the metal. "Use the key," Grandpa shouted, voice cracking against the wind. Before they... A sound split the air, a gunshot. I hit the ground. When I looked up, the fog was moving again, shapes within it. Footsteps, shouts, and Grandpa. Grandpa was gone. The safe was still there. The key still fit. My hands trembled as the latch clicked. Inside, just darkness. A stack of documents, maybe. Something small wrapped in cloth. I reached in. Headlights flared through the fog. A car. Black. No plates. Doors opened. Footsteps, and the first voice I heard made every hair on my neck stand on end. "Colton, what are you doing here?" It was Derek, but his tone wasn't casual. It wasn't curious, it was commanding, cold, and as he stepped closer, the morning light caught his face, expressionless, eyes unreadable, and I realized my grandfather had been right about everything, absolutely everything, because at that moment, I knew the truth. Whatever was inside that safe, whatever secret had haunted my grandfather all these years, was something people were willing to kill for, and I only had one thing left to do. Run. The wind tore across the yard, carrying the echo of that word through the fog, through the rails, through every memory of the life I'd just lost. Because when Reuben Bridges told you something mattered, you listened, and this time, his final time, he told me to run. But the real question wasn't, from what? It was, to where? And that is where the story truly begins. It's strange how the end of your world can smell like pot roast and cinnamon. Comfort, warmth, family. Except tonight, those scents felt different, like they were trying to say goodbye. My grandfather, Reuben Bridges, had always been the unshakable center of every Sunday dinner. But that night, in the glow of the kitchen light, something had shifted. The moment the swinging door closed behind us, muffling the sound of my nephews arguing over the last slice of pie. I saw it, real fear in his eyes. He waited just long enough for the room beyond the door to fall into laughter before he spoke. "Listen, carefully," he said. His voice rough as gravel, then he grabbed my wrist, hard. Too hard for a man of 78. His fingers pressed into my skin, leaving marks that would stay there long after he was gone. From inside his cardigan, he pulled a manila envelope. Edges soft and worn, like it had been handled hundreds of times. "Your life isn't what you think it is. Neither is mine." Those words cracked the world open. He pressed the envelope into my palm. It was heavier than it looked, and I could feel something solid inside, rectangular, metallic. "There's a key taped inside. Storage Unit 47 at Riverside Facility. Everything you need to know is there." My throat tightened. "Grandpa, what are you talking about?" But before I could open it, before I could even breathe, his hands came down over mine, stopping me. "Not here," he whispered, low and sharp. "Not now. They've been patient for 20 years, but something's changed. They know about you now." The words, "they know about you," slid into my bones like ice. Before I could ask who they were, the kitchen door swung open. Derek, my brother-in-law, walked in, carrying 2 pie plates. His easy grin faltered the second he saw us. His eyes flicked from Grandpa's face to mine, then down to the envelope in my hands, and for just a heartbeat, just long enough for me to feel it, there was recognition in his eyes. Not confusion, not surprise. Recognition. "Everything okay in here?" His tone wasn't casual. It had an edge, sharp, testing. Grandpa's change was instantaneous. His body language softened, his face transformed into a grin I'd seen 1,000 times. "Just giving Colton an old recipe of your grandmother's," he said with an easy laugh. "Boy can't cook worth a damn. Burned water once, didn't you, son?" I forced myself to smile. "That was one time, and the pot was defective." Derek chuckled, setting the plates in the sink. But something about his movements felt off. Too slow, too deliberate, like he was stalling for time. "Family recipes," he said, still smiling. "Those are important to preserve. You never know when you might need them." The way he said it made my stomach twist. His eyes met mine, holding just a second too long. Then he turned back to the sink. Grandpa's hand found my elbow squeezing once, a warning. "We should get back," he said lightly. "Joyce'll wonder where we disappeared to." And just like that, the moment ended. But the unease didn't. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Voices faded in and out like a half-remembered dream. My mom laughed, my dad told stories, Penny gushed about the twins' kindergarten teacher. Derek asked me questions that seemed harmless on the surface, but every word felt weighted. "Any interesting cases at the clinic lately? You taking any time off soon? Ever think about moving somewhere new? Starting fresh?" Each question felt like it had another meaning buried underneath. And the way his eyes lingered, watchful, assessing, made my heart race. Every time I caught him looking, he smiled. And every time, that smile reached everywhere but his eyes. By the time dessert was over, I could barely taste the coffee in my cup. That envelope burned like a brand against my side. The drive home that night was torture. Every headlight behind me felt like a tail. Every car that stayed in my rearview mirror for too long sent panic crawling up my throat. I took 3 extra turns, doubled back twice, cut through the gas station lot just to see if anyone followed. No one did, but the feeling wouldn't leave. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex, I didn't take the front entrance. I looped around to the back, killed the lights early, watched the street before stepping out. The manila envelope sat on the passenger seat, silent and heavy, like a ticking bomb waiting to go off. Inside my apartment, I locked the door, then the deadbolt, then the chain. I pulled every blind closed. Only then, when I was sealed off from the outside world, did I finally tear the envelope open with shaking hands. 3 items hit the countertop. A brass key, with the number 47 stamped into it. Photograph. Old and faded, and a single sheet of paper with 5 words written in my grandfather's careful handwriting. Your father isn't your father. I stared at the page. Read the words again. Again. Until they blurred and I couldn't see them anymore. My knees gave out. I sank into a chair. Wayne Bridges wasn't my father? That couldn't be right. The man who'd raised me, taught me how to throw a baseball even though we both knew I was terrible at it. The man who'd stood beside me at every graduation, who'd worked weekends at his hardware store just to help pay my vet school tuition. The man who'd built this entire family around loyalty and love. It wasn't possible, but the paper didn't lie. Grandpa didn't lie. He never lied. The brass key caught the light, scattering reflections across my kitchen wall. Storage Unit 47, Riverside. Facility. Whatever truth Grandpa had been hiding had been waiting 20 years to tear my life apart. I thought about rushing there immediately, but something stopped me. His words. 24 hours. Not a minute more. There was a reason for that. There had to be. Maybe the place was watched. Maybe they'd expect me to run straight there. So I waited. I planned. I remembered the lessons Grandpa had taught me when I was 16 and paranoid about my ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend following me. Never go straight anywhere if you think you're being watched. Make them work for it. Make them expose themselves. I'd thought it was just one of his odd bits of wisdom back then. But now, it sounded like training. I packed like a man on the run. 3 changes of clothes, neutral colors, nothing memorable. My passport, untouched since a trip to Canada 5 years ago. Every dollar of cash I could find. $32 in my wallet, $200 in an emergency coffee can, $500 more from my checking account at an ATM that didn't have cameras, laptop, charger, external drive with my clinic files, and a veterinary field kit. Antibiotics, sutures, gloves, bandages, because some instinct whispered that I might need them more than I'd need extra socks. What kind of truth required a passport? What kind of danger made a man pack like he might never come home? At 3 a.m., sleep was impossible. I sat at my kitchen table, the photograph between my hands. A young woman stood beside Grandpa, smiling faintly. She was beautiful. Dark hair pinned back, intelligent eyes that seemed alive even through the yellowed paper. Grandpa was in his railroad uniform, younger, harder. There was something in his stance, alert, almost military. I didn't recognize the woman, but the more I looked, the more something tugged at me. Her eyes, sharp green, the same green I saw every morning in the mirror. Neither Mom nor Dad had green eyes. It hit me like a punch to the chest. Was she? No, I couldn't finish the thought. At 6 a.m., I called the clinic. Left a message on the answering service. This is Colton. I've got severe food poisoning. Probably bad seafood. I'll need someone to cover my appointments for a few days. I'll call when I can. The lie slid out too easily. The drive to Maku, Riverside Storage, felt like slipping out of one world and into another. Cedar Falls was still asleep as I rolled past the darkened shops, the silent houses, the glowing streetlights that seemed to watch as I passed. I took 3 routes, looping back, making sure no one followed. The facility sat behind a chain-link fence on the edge of town, surrounded by old warehouses and rusted rail lines. A place nobody noticed anymore. Unit 47 was tucked into the far corner. The padlock was coated in dust and cobwebs. It looked untouched for years. The key slid in with resistance. Turned. Click. The metal door rolled upward with a groan. The light inside flickered once when I pulled the chain, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Dozens of banker's boxes, neatly stacked, each one labeled in neat handwriting, years scrawled across the fronts. 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, transition period. At the back, on an old wooden table, sat a fireproof safe. My pulse thundered. I opened the box labeled 2001-2002 Transition Period. Inside were papers, government forms, stamped with official seals. I picked one up. My hands started to tremble. The heading read, United States Department of Justice, Witness Protection Program. My breath caught. I shuffled through the stack. Each document was more impossible than the last. Legal agreements, relocation forms, sealed affidavits. And then I found it. A birth certificate. Name, Colton James Novak. Born, March 15, 1993, my birthday, but not my name, not my identity, my entire life, every story, every memory, every piece of who I thought I was a fabrication built to hide something, someone. I stumbled backward, the papers slipping through my hands. Witness protection. My grandfather. My parents, me, but from who? The names on the forms were redacted, black bars covering everything, locations, case numbers, aliases, and yet one seal caught my attention, faded, but still legible. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Affairs Division. A chill ran down my spine. Why would the FBI's internal affairs be involved in a witness relocation case? Unless the threat wasn't from outside, unless it came from within. And that's when I noticed something else, a small leather-bound notebook tucked behind the boxes. I opened it. Inside were dates, coordinates, and single-line entries. Short, cryptic. June 14th, contact compromised. Burn list initiated. July 3rd, bridge confirmed location of asset. August 9th, subject 47 relocated to secondary cover. Subject 47, my stomach twisted. Was that me? I turned the page. The next entry was a single sentence written in trembling ink. If you're reading this, Colton, they found me again. Trust no one, especially Derek. My hand went cold. I looked around the unit, the dust, the silence, the feeling of being watched. And that's when I realized something. The metal door behind me was no longer all the way open. It had moved, just an inch, enough to make a sound I shouldn't have ignored. I froze, breath shallow, footsteps, soft, careful, moving closer. I turned toward the light, every muscle locked in place. A shadow stretched across the concrete floor. And then a voice. Low, calm, too familiar, cut through the silence. You shouldn't have come here. Colton. Derek, standing in the doorway. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. And in that moment, with the hum of the fluorescent bulb flickering above us, I finally understood. Grandpa hadn't just been protecting me from strangers, he'd been protecting me from family. And whatever truth was buried in those boxes, whatever secret my grandfather had died to keep, was something that could destroy everything, or everyone. Because the next move was mine. Deep, tense breath. You ever have one of those moments where the ground just shifts under you, where everything you thought was solid, your family, your memories, your entire identity, suddenly feels like a story someone else wrote for you? That's what happened the day I opened that safe. It started with paper and ink, documents that shouldn't have existed, photographs that told a story I was never supposed to see. Every folder I opened peeled away another layer of my life until there was nothing left but questions, and one name that changed. Everything. Felix Novak. That was my father's real name, not Wayne Bridges. The man who taught me to throw a baseball and ran. The old hardware store in Cedar Falls. No, my real father was an accountant for the Moretti crime family in Chicago, a man who spent 2 years quietly collecting evidence before turning it over to the feds. And the price of that decision? Everything. The woman in the photograph, the one standing beside my so-called grandpa in that yellowed picture, was his sister, Elena Novak. She was murdered 3 weeks after the trial. Her death wasn't random. It was a message, a warning that the Moretti family never forgets. And my mother, Joyce Bridges, wasn't Joyce Bridges at all. Her real name was Joyce Henley, Felix's girlfriend. 3 months pregnant when he entered witness protection, the Marshalls gave her a new name, a new life, and a man to marry who wouldn't ask questions, a lonely hardware store owner named Wayne. So, yeah, I was born a lie. But here's the part that tore me apart the most. Grandpa Reuben, the man who taught me chess, who fished with me at the lake, who made me feel safe, wasn't my grandfather. His real name was Marshall Reuben Chase, Felix's handler, the man responsible for keeping my mother and me alive. He'd retired, moved to Cedar Falls, and spent 20 years pretending to be a kindly old railroad worker. But every camping trip, every lesson about awareness, every talk about strategy, it was all training for this moment. Because somewhere out there, someone had been waiting for me. The safe's combination was my birthday. Simple, familiar, a detail so small I almost laughed when the lock clicked open. But what waited inside wasn't a joke. There was a thick stack of cash, $50,000 in small, worn bills, a loaded Glock 19 with 2 extra magazines, and a cheap prepaid phone. It rang the second I picked it up. "Colton," a voice said, Grandpa's voice, except not the warm, joking one I'd known all my life. This was the voice of a lawman, steady, sharp, controlled. "Is any of it real?" I asked. My voice broke. "Any of our life?" "The love was real," he said quickly. "Everything that mattered was real. But listen to me now. We don't have much time." Then came the words that made my blood run cold. Derek found something. My brother-in-law, Penny's husband, the man who'd built my mom's deck, who coached my nephew's baseball team, who'd been part of every family dinner for 8 years, Grandpa continued. 3 weeks ago, someone tried to mail a letter to your clinic. We've been intercepting Felix's attempts to contact you for years. But this one slipped through. Derek got it first," he paused. "He's not who you think he is, Colton. He married Penny to get close to your family. The Morettis never forgot what Felix did to them." I swear my whole body went cold. Derek, the man who hugged me every Christmas, who toasted my graduation, had been playing a role this entire time. The Morettis had waited 20 years, raised their children, buried their old bosses, and still, the debt lived on. That's how these families work. Generation to generation, debt to debt, blood for blood. I asked where Felix was, where my father was. "We don't know," Grandpa said. "But that letter proved he's alive. And now they know too. There's a bus ticket in the safe. It leaves in 2 hours. Someone will meet you in Memphis." I shoved the money into my backpack. My hands were trembling so hard the zipper slipped. Then I heard it. Footsteps on gravel outside. Slow, measured, someone who didn't care if I heard them. I turned off the light, peered through the crack in the storage unit door. Derek stood there. He looked tired, not angry, not armed. Just standing 20 feet away, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "I know you're in there, Colton," he called out. "I'm alone. We need to talk." For a moment, I thought about staying hidden. But then, something in his voice, something honest, made me open the door. He looked like any other Sunday evening. Nice jacket, hair combed. Just the brother-in-law I'd shared beers with 1,000 times. "You couldn't just leave it alone," he said, stepping forward. 20 years we waited, watching, making sure Felix never came back. And then, I meet Penny. He gave a soft, bitter laugh. "Can you believe that? I was sent to infiltrate your family, and I actually fell in love with her before I even knew who she was." "So everything was a lie?" I asked. "No." His voice cracked. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. I convinced them to let it go. Told them Felix was dead, that you knew nothing, that there was no point in punishing a man who'd raised another man's son." He took another step closer, his hands still visible. "Uncle Anthony, the old man who started all of this, he's dying of cancer in prison. He doesn't care about vendettas anymore. But I didn't lower my guard. My hand hovered near the Glock in the bag even though I didn't want to use it. Derek kept talking. Then last month Felix tried to contact you. That letter proved he's alive. The family couldn't ignore that. You're his blood, Colton. And in our world, that debt passes from father to son. You were going to kill me? My voice was a whisper. Your wife's brother. Your kid's uncle. He flinched. Not kill. Never kill. Just use you. Leverage to draw Felix out. He'd come for you. He's that kind of man. My mind was spinning. The sound of my pulse filled my ears. But listen to me, Derek said, his tone shifting, urgent now. I already called them. Told them you were at the Birch Street facility. They're heading there now. My heart lurched. Why would you do that? Because I have 2 boys who love their Uncle Colton, he said, voice breaking. They beg to see you every weekend. They draw you pictures. Penny, she'd never forgive me if something happened to you. 20 years of Sunday dinners should count for something, even in my family's twisted accounting. He reached into his pocket and tossed me a set of keys. Gray Honda Civic parked behind the building. Registration's clean. Belonged to a college kid who sold it for cash last week. Papers are in the glove box. Reuben arranged it. That stopped me cold. Reuben? Derek nodded. Yeah, that paranoid old marshal really did think of everything. Derek, if they find out you let me go, they'll kill you. He gave a small broken smile. No, they won't. I'm too valuable. Married too deep into your family. But they'll make me watch them hurt Penny to punish me. Which is worse. Silence hung between us. So you need to run, he said quietly. Run fast, run far. And you can never contact any of them again. Not your mom. Not Penny, not the twins. Colton Bridges needs to die today. I shook my head. How do I know this isn't another trick? Derek pulled out his phone, showed me a map. 3 red dots moving toward Birch Street. Because in 10 minutes, they're going to realize you're not there. And then they'll come here. So stop asking questions and run. My body moved on instinct. I grabbed the bag, the boxes, the photo, the cash. At the door, I looked back one last time. He stood framed in the light of the unit, his face half in shadow. Take care of them, I said. With my life, he answered. Now go, become someone else. Live a life Felix would be proud of, even if he never gets to see it. I ran. The cold air hit my face like a slap as I sprinted to the Civic. The keys fit. The engine started. I threw everything in the trunk and hit the gas, tires screaming against the gravel. In the rearview mirror, I saw Derek standing in the doorway, phone to his ear, already slipping back into his role, already becoming the man the Morettis still thought he was. As the highway opened up ahead of me, the lights of Cedar Falls faded behind. Colton Bridges, the man I'd been, was gone. Whoever I became next would have to be enough. But as the first hints of dawn streaked across the horizon, one thought wouldn't leave my mind. If Felix Novak was alive, then this wasn't over. Not by a long shot, because somewhere out there, the man who started all of this was still running, and now, so was I. A pause. Soft hum of the engine fades as the narrator whispers. The question is, who'll stop running first? The gray Honda wasn't my truck, and it sure didn't feel like home behind that wheel. Lowered, close to the ground, quiet and invisible in the morning traffic. A ghost among the living. That's what I'd become. A man no longer attached to a name, a town, or a past. 10 hours from Memphis, but I didn't go there. Memphis was the obvious choice. And obvious gets you caught, so instead, I drove north. No plan, no destination, just instinct and an old memory. A small town in Iowa. Grandpa once mentioned a friend there, back when his stories sounded like railroad fairy tales instead of coded warnings. Her name was Catherine. Used to be a marshal, like him. Now she ran a diner that smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee. And behind that counter she handed me a sealed envelope. Inside, my new life. Nathan Frost, traveling livestock inspector. It wasn't glamorous, but it was brilliant. The kind of job that kept you moving. One day in Des Moines, next week in Fargo, then across state lines before anyone thought to remember your face. I learned to live out of motels and roadside diners. My luggage, 2 duffel bags, one with clothes, one with a new life packed neatly inside. 3 months later, it came, the postcard. It arrived at my Minnesota mail drop. Cedar Falls Water Tower on the front. On the back, a few words in Grandpa's careful handwriting. The weather's been clear. No storms expected. The garden's growing well. Code, our code. It meant you're safe. They've stopped looking. The family is okay. I kept that postcard tucked inside my wallet right next to a worn photo of Felix and Elena, my father and aunt, 2 people I'd never meet, 2 ghosts whose choices carved the path beneath my feet. Felix, the man who stood against killers and paid with everything. Elena, who carried his secret to her grave. Sometimes, when the night was too quiet and the road too long, I'd study that photo. The way Felix's jaw tightened like a man who'd seen too much. The faint, sad smile on Elena's lips. And I'd wonder, did he ever know what happened to me? Did he know his son became a veterinarian in some corner of Iowa, stitching cattle under dim barn lights, pretending the name Nathan Frost had always belonged to him? Did he know that his blood, his fire, still lived on in me? Because I'd inherited more than just his eyes. I'd inherited that sense of right and wrong, that quiet, stubborn code that refuses to die. But what I thought about most were the dinners. Sunday evenings. 6:00 p.m. sharp. Mom's pot roast. Too much salt every time, but nobody dared say it. Dad's stories about customers at the hardware store. Penny trying to keep the twins from launching peas across the table. Derek, smiling that practiced smile hiding more than any of us realized back then. And Grandpa Reuben at the head of the table checking his old Timex, keeping vigil over all of us. That table was home. The kind of home you only understand once you've lost it. Now, I just drive. The veterinary practice I built in Cedar Falls, gone. Replaced by Dr. Sarah Chen, fresh out of Iowa State, sharp, kind, and ready to prove herself. Mrs. Patterson's cat got her surgery. The farmers found a new number to call when a calf struggled in the night. Life didn't stop when Colton Bridges vanished. It moved on. As it should, sometimes I catch the highway sign, Cedar Falls, next right. It's just a green blur at 70 miles an hour. But every time, my hands tighten on the wheel, because that one simple turn could take me back to the world I left behind. Once, I actually took it. I pulled off at a rest stop just outside of town, climbed the small hill behind it, where you can see the lights spread out like a quilt. Tiny, golden squares stitched together by streets I once knew by heart. And from there, I could almost find Maple Avenue. Could almost see the house where my family sat down to dinner. It was Sunday. 6:00 p.m., I could feel it. Mom fussing that something wasn't quite right, Dad chuckling saying it was perfect, Penny wrangling the twins, Derek playing the role of the calm, collected husband, the part that had become real now. Grandpa Reuben at the head of the table, his old watch ticking in rhythm with his quiet prayers. And me, standing on a hill, watching from a distance like a ghost too stubborn to rest. That's my curse, to watch the life I can never rejoin. But every Sunday evening, no matter where I am, I keep the ritual alive. Sometimes, it's a truck stop off I-35. Sometimes, a diner where the waitress calls everyone. Hunter, sometimes just a sandwich eaten alone, in the dark cab of a car that isn't mine. But when the clock hits 6, I stop. I raise my drink, whatever it is, and toast to the people who saved me by letting me go. The family that pretends I never existed, so I could keep existing somewhere else. Because the night that envelope reached my hands, everything changed, not because of the secrets it held, though they were heavy enough to crush a man, but because of the love that hid inside those words. Grandpa knew the storm was coming long before I did. 20 years, maybe more. He saw it gathering on the horizon. The kind of storm that doesn't just take lives, it erases them. Every fishing trip, every chess game, every old story about the railroad, Those weren't hobbies. They were training. Lessons disguised as memories. He was teaching me how to survive, when to move, when to stay still, how to read people the way a hunter reads tracks in mud. He didn't just give me a new identity. He gave me the tools to disappear, to vanish without leaving ripples. He gave me life by teaching me how to live without one. Sometimes I wonder if Felix Novak, my real father, is still out there somewhere, living under another name. Maybe in another small town, fixing fences, pretending to belong. Maybe he's still looking over his shoulder, haunted by the same ghosts that trail me. If so, then we're connected, he and I, by absence rather than presence. Two men bound by what we lost, not what we kept. Two ghosts walking different roads toward the same horizon, both of us choosing survival over belonging, or maybe the choice was made for us long ago. Either way, we survived, and sometimes that's the only victory you get. But surviving isn't living. It's a different kind of existence, one where every knock on a motel door makes your heart race, one where every glance in the rearview mirror could be the last. You start to live quietly. You stop taking up space. You learn to smile just enough, talk just enough, be just enough. The world keeps spinning, and you become part of its background noise. Unseen, unheard. Free, but lonely. Because disappearing doesn't just erase your enemies, it erases you. And maybe that's the real cost of survival. Some nights I dream of Cedar Falls, the smell of the hardware store, the sound of the bell over the door when customers walked in, Penny's laugh echoing from the back room, Grandpa's stories about the war. And in those dreams, I walk through the front door, and nobody even blinks. Because in that dream, I never left. I'm still Colton Bridges. Not Nathan Frost, not a ghost, just me. Then I wake up, and the world is silent again. The postcard still sits in my wallet, the ink fading, the corners curling. The weather's been clear. No storms expected. Maybe that was his way of saying goodbye. Or maybe it was his way of reminding me that even the clearest skies can turn dark without warning. So I stay alert. I stay ready, because storms always come back. And when they do, I'll be ready again. But here's the part no one tells you. When you vanish, when you shed your name and your face, you don't lose everything. You carry echoes. Tiny fragments of who you were. The way your mom said your name. The smell of your dad's workshop. The creak of the front porch step that always needed fixing. Those things cling to you. They whisper when the night is quiet. They remind you that somewhere out there, someone once loved you enough to let you go. And that's the paradox, isn't it? The greatest act of love isn't always holding on. Sometimes it's the courage to release. To trust that the one you love will find their way, even in the dark. I owe everything to that love. The kind that doesn't fade, even when the person does. The kind that survives in postcards and memories and the quiet toast at a table for one. And maybe, someday, when the roads finally stop calling, when the name Nathan Frost has been worn smooth by years of use, I'll stop running. Maybe I'll find a small town that doesn't ask questions. A place with a diner that serves bad coffee and pie that's always almost fresh. And I'll sit by the window, watching the rain, and for the first time in a long time, I'll let myself breathe. Because survival is a skill. But peace is a choice, and one day I'll be ready to make it. Until then, I drive, mile after mile, face after face, each one reminding me of what it means to live unseen. And somewhere out there, under a different name, maybe even across an ocean, another man is doing the same. A man named Felix Novak, my father. My shadow, and one day, our roads might cross, maybe not in this life, maybe not in this world, but somewhere beyond the noise, beyond the names, beyond the fear, there's a place where ghosts finally rest. And when I get there, I'll sit down at a table again, 6 p.m. sharp, and this time, when I raise my glass, it won't be to absence, it'll be to home, to love. To the family that saved me, to the man I used to be, and to the ones still walking the line between being seen and staying safe. Because not every ghost is dead. Some of us are just waiting for the world to forget long enough to start living again. And maybe, just maybe, that time is closer than I think.